Hello, my dear students. Welcome to Teacher at Home. Today class we are going to learn the second chapter of federalism. Overview. In the previous chapter, we noted that vertical division of power among different levels of government is one of the major forms of power sharing in modern democracies. In this chapter, we focus on this form of power sharing. It is most commonly referred to as federalism. We begin by describing federalism in general terms. The rest of the chapter tries to understand the theory and practice of federalism in India. A discussion of the federal constitutional provisions is followed by an analysis of the policies and politics that has strengthened federalism in practice. Towards the end of the chapter, we turn to the local government, a new and third tier of Indian federalism. What is federalism? Let us get back to the contact between Belgium and Sri Lanka that we saw in the last chapter. You would recall that one of the key changes made in the constitution of Belgium was to reduce the power of the central government and to give these powers to the regional governments. Regional government existed in Belgium even earlier. They had their roles and powers, but all these powers were given to the governments and could be withdrawn by the central government. The change that took place in 1993 was that the regional government were given constitutional powers that were no longer dependent on the central government. Thus, Belgium shifted from a unitary to a federal form of government. Sri Lanka continues to be, for all practical purposes, a unitary system where the national government has all the powers. Team leaders want Sri Lanka to become a federal system. Federalism is a system of government in which the power is divided between a central authority and various constituent units of the country. Usually, a federalism has two levels of government. One is the government for the entire country that is usually responsible for the few subjects of common national interest. Others are governments at the level of provinces or states that look after much of the day-to-day administering of their state. Both the levels of governments enjoy the power independent of the other. In this sense, federations are contrasted with unitary governments. Under the unitary system, either there is only one level of government or the subunits are subordinate to the central government. Central government can pass on orders to the provincial or the local government. But in the federal system, the central government cannot order the state government to do something. State government has power to its own for which it is not answerable to the central government. Both these governments are separately answerable to the people. Look, Let us look at some of the key features of federalism. There are two or more levels of government. Different types of government govern the same citizen, but each tier has its own jurisdiction in special matters of legislation, taxation, and administration. The jurisdictions of the respective levels of tiers of government are specified in the Constitution. So the existence and authority of each tier of government is continuously constitutionally guaranteed. The feudalism fundamental provisions of the Constitution cannot be unilaterally changed by one level of the government. Such changes require the consent of both the levels of the government. Courts have the power to interpret the Constitution and the power of different levels of government. Highest court act as an umpire if disputes arise between different levels of government in the exercise of their respective powers. Sources of revenue for each level of government are clearly specified to ensure its financial autonomy. The federal system thus has dual objectives to safeguard and promote unity of the country while at the same time accommodate regional diversity. Therefore, two aspects are crucial for the institutions and practice of federalism. Government at different levels should agree to some rules of power sharing. They should also trust that each would abide by its part of the agreement. An ideal federal system has both aspects, mutual trust and agreement to live together. Exact balance of power between the central and the state government varies from one federation to another. This balance depends mainly on the historical context in which the federation was formed. There are two kinds of routes through which federation has been formed. The first route involves independent states coming together on their own to form a bigger unit, so that by pooling sovereignty and retaining identity, they can increase their security. This type of coming together federations include the USA, Switzerland, and Australia. In this first category of federalism, All the constituent states usually have equal power and are strong vis-a-vis the federal government. The second route is where a large country decides to divide its power between the constituent states and the national government. India, Spain, and Belgium are examples of this kind of holding together federations. In this second category, the central government tends to be more powerful vis-a-vis the states. Very often, different constituent units of the federation have unequal powers. Some units are granted special powers. Some Nepali citizens are discussing the proposals on the adaptation of federalism in their new constitution. This is what some of them said. Khan Raj, I don't like federalism. It would lead to reservation of seats for different caste groups as in India. Sarida, ours is not a very big country. We don't need federalism. Babulal, I am hopeful that the Tara areas will get more autonomy if they get their own state government. Ram Ganesh, I like federalism because it will mean that powers that were earlier enjoyed by the king will now be exercised by our elected representatives. If you are participating in this conversation, what would be your response to each of these? Each of these reflect a wrong understanding of the federalism is what makes India a federal country. That question, what makes India a federal country? We have earlier seen how small countries like Belgium and Sri Lanka face so many problems in managing diversity. What about a vast country like India, with so many languages, religions, and regions? What are their power sharing arrangements in the country? Let us begin with the constitution. India has emerged as an independent nation after a painful and bloody partition. Soon after independence, several princely states became a part of the country. The constitution declared India as a union of states. Although it did not use the word federation, the Indian Union is based on the principles of federalism. Let us go back to the 7 features of federalism mentioned above. We can see that all these features apply to the provisions of the Indian Constitution. The Constitution originally provided for a two-tier system of government. The Union government, or what we call the central government, representing the Union of India and the state governments. Later, a three-tier of federalism was added in the form of panchayat and municipalities. As in any federation, these different tiers enjoy separate jurisdiction. The Constitution clearly provided a tier for co-distribution or legislative powers between the union government and the state government. Thus, it contained 3 lists: Union list, State list, and Concurrent list. Union list includes subjects of national importance such as defense of the country, foreign affairs, banking, communication, and currency. They are included in the list because we need a uniform policy on these matters throughout the country. Union government alone can make laws relating to the subjects mentioned in the Union list. State list contains subjects of state and local importance such as police, trade, commerce, agriculture, and irrigation. The state government alone can make laws relating to the subjects mentioned in the state list. Concurrent list includes subjects of common interest to both the union government as well as the state government such as education, forests, trade union, marriage, adoption, and succession. Both the union as well as the state government can make the laws on the subject mentioned in the list. If these laws conflict with each other, the law made by the union government will prevail. What about subjects that do not fall in any of these 3 lists? Or subjects like computer software that came up after the constitution was made. According to the constitution, the union government has the power to legislate on these residuary subjects. We noted above the most federations that are formed by holding together do not give equal power to the constituent units. Thus, all states in the Indian Union do not have identical powers. Some states enjoy a special status. States such as Assam, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram enjoy special powers under certain provisions of the Constitution of India. Article 371, due to their peculiar social and historical circumstances, the special powers are especially enjoyed in relation to the protection and land rights of indigenous peoples, their culture, and their preferential employment in government services. Indians who are not permanent residents of the state cannot buy land or house here. Similar special provision exists for some other states of India as well. There are some units of the Indian Union which enjoy very little power. These are areas which are too small to become an independent state but which could not be merged with any of the existing states. These areas like Chandigarh or Lakshadweep or the capital city of Delhi are called union territories. These territories do not have the powers of a state. Central government has special powers in running these areas. Sharing of power between the union government and the state government is basic to the structure of the constitution. It is not easy to make changes to this power sharing arrangement. A parliament cannot on its own change this arrangement. Any change to it has to be first passed by both the houses of the parliament with at least two-thirds majority. Then it has to be ratified by the legislature of at least half of the total states. Judiciary plays an important role in overseeing the implementation of constitutional provisions and procedures. In case of any dispute about the division of powers, the High Court and the Supreme Court make a decision. Union and the state government have the power to raise resources by levying taxes in order to carry on the government and the responsibility assigned to each of them. Pokhran, the place where India conducted its nuclear test, lies in Rajasthan. Suppose the government of Rajasthan was opposed to the central government's nuclear policy. Could it prevent the government of India from conducting the nuclear test? Suppose the government of Sikkim plans to introduce new textbooks in its school, but the union government does not like the style and content of the new textbook. In this case, does the state government need to take permission from the union government before this textbook can be launched? Suppose the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and Orissa have different policies on how their state policy should be responded to the Naxalites. Can the Prime Minister of India intervene and pass an order that all the Chief Minister will have to obey? How is federalism practiced? Constitutional provisions are necessary for the success of federalism, but they are not sufficient. If the federal experiment has succeeded in India, it is not merely because of the clearly laid out constitutional provisions. The real success of federalism in India can be attributed to the nature of democratic policies in our country. This ensured that the spirit of federalism, respect for diversity, and desire for living together became shared ideas in our country. Let us look at some of the major ways in which it happened. Linguistic states. The creation of linguistic states was the first and the major test for democratic policies in our country. If we look at the political map of India, when it began its journey as a democracy, 1947, and that of 2019, you will be surprised by the extent of the changes. Many old states have vanished and many new states have been created. Areas, boundaries, and names of the states have been changed. In 1947, the boundaries of several old states of India were changed in order to create new states. This was done to ensure that people who spoke the same language lived in the same state. Some states were created not on the basis of language but to recognize differences based on culture, ethnicity, or geography. This includes states like Nagaland, Uttarakhand, and Jharkhand. When the demand for the formation of states on the basis of the language was raised, some national leaders feared that it would lead to the disintegration of this country. Central government resisted linguistic states for some time, but the experience has shown that the formation of linguistic states has actually made the country more united. It has also made administration easier. Language policy. The second test for Indian Federation of Language Policy. Our constitution did not give the status of national language to any one language. Hindi was identified as official language, but Hindi is the mother tongue of only about 40% of Indians. Therefore, there were many safeguards to protect other languages. Besides Hindi, there are 21 other languages recognized as scheduled languages by the Constitution. A candidate in an examination conducted for the central government positions may opt to take the examination in any of these languages. States too have their own language, official languages. Much of the government work takes place in the official language of the concerned state. Unlike Sri Lanka, the leaders of our country adopted a very cautious attitude in spreading the use of Hindi. According to the constitution, the use of English for official purposes was to stop in 1965. However, many non-Indian speaking states demanded that the use of English continue. In Tamil Nadu, the movement took a violent form. The central government responded by agreeing to continue the use of English along with Hindi for official purposes. Many critics think that the solution favored the English speaking elite. Promotion of Hindi continues to be the official policy of the Government of India. Promotion does not mean that the central government can impose Hindi on states where people speak a different language. The flexibility shown by Indian political leaders helped our country avoid the kind of situation that Sri Lanka finds itself in. Center state relations. Restructuring the center state relation is one more way in which federalism has been strengthened in practice. How the constitutional arrangement for sharing the power work in reality depends on a large extent how the ruling parties and leaders follow these arrangements. For a long time, the same party ruled both at the center and in most of the states. This means that the state government did not exercise their right as autonomous federal units. As and when the ruling party at the state level was different, the parties that ruled at the center tried to undermine the power of the state. In those days, the central government would often misuse the constitution to dismiss the state government that were controlled by rival parties. This undermined the spirit of federalism. All this changed significantly after 1990. This spirit saw the rise of regional political parties in many states of the country. This was also the beginning of the era of coalition governments at the center. Since no single party got a clear majority in the Lok Sabha, the major national parties had to enter into an alliance with many parties, including several regional parties, to form a government at the center. This led to a new culture of power sharing and respect of the autonomy of state governments. This trend was supported by a major judgment of the Supreme Court that made it difficult for the central government to dismiss state government in an arbitrary manner. Thus, federal power sharing is more effective today than it was in the early years after the Constitution came into force. Linguistic diversity of India. How many languages do we have in India? The answer depends on how one counts it. The latest information that we have is from Census of India held in 2011. The census recorded more than 1,300 distinct languages, which people mentioned as their mother tongues. These languages were grouped together under some major languages. For example, languages like Bhojpuri, Magadhi, Bundelkhandi, Chhattisgarhi, Rajasthani, and many others were grouped together under Hindi. Even after this grouping, the census found 121 major languages. Of these, 22 languages are now included in the 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution and are therefore called scheduled languages. Others are called non-scheduled languages. In terms of languages, India is perhaps the most diverse country in the world. A look at the enclosed table make it clear that no one language is the mother tongue of the majority of our population. The largest language, Hindi, is the mother tongue of only about 44% Indians. If we add to that all those who knew Hindi as their second or third language, the total number was still less than 50% in 2011. As for English, only 0.02% Indians recorded it as their mother tongue. Another 11% knew it as the second or third language. Read this table carefully, but you need not memorize it, just as the following. Read the following spurts from an article by noted historian Ramachandra Guha that appeared in the Times of India on November 1st. The report of the State Reorganization Commission (SRC) was implemented exactly 50 years ago on November 1st, 1956. This, in its own time and own way, has to be transformed the political and institutional life of the nation. Gandhi and other leaders promised their rulers followers that when freedom came, the new nation would be based on a new set of provinces. This based on the principle of language. However, when India was finally freed in 1947, it was also divided. Partition was the consequence of primordial attachment to one's faith. How many partitions would that one primordial loyalty language had led to? So ran the thinking of Nehru, Patel, and Rajaji. Far from undermining India unity, linguistic states have helped strengthen it. It has proved to be perfectly consistent to be Kannadiga, and the Indian Bengali and Indian, Tamil and Indian, Gujarati and Indian. To be sure, these states, based on language, sometimes quarrel with one another. While these disputes are not pretty, they could in fact have been far worse. It is the formation of linguistic state that has allowed India to escape what might have been a worse fate still. If the sentiments of the native speakers of Telugu Marathi had been disregarded, that we might have here was one language, 14 to 15 nations. Take the example of your own state, any other state that was affected by linguistic organization. Write a short note for the against argument given by the author here on the basis of that example. Decentralization in India. We noted above the federal governments have two or more tiers of government. We have so far discussed the two tiers of government in our country. But a vast country like India cannot be run only through these two tiers. States in India are as large as independent countries of Europe in terms of population. Uttar Pradesh is bigger than Russia. Maharashtra is about as big as Germany. But of these states are internally very diverse. There is thus a need for power sharing within these states. Federal power sharing in India needs another tier of government below that of the state government. This is the rationale for decentralization of power. Thus resulted a third tier of government called local government. When power is taken away from central and state government and given to local government, it is called decentralization. The basic idea behind decentralization is that there are a large number of problems and issues which are best settled at the local level. People have better knowledge of problems in their localities. They also have better ideas on where to spend money, how to manage things more efficiently. Besides, at the local level, it is possible for the people to directly participate in decision making. This helps to inculcate a habit of democratic participation. Local government is the best way to realize one important principle of democracy, namely local self government. The need for decentralization was recognized in our constitution. Since then, there has been several attempts to decentralize power to the level of villages and towns. Panchayat in villages and municipalities in urban areas were set up in all the states, but these were directly under the control of state government. Elections to this local government were not held regularly. Local government did not have any power of resources of their own. Thus, there were a little decentralization in effective terms. A major step towards decentralization was taken in 1992. The constitution was amended to make the third tier of democracy more powerful and effective. Now it is constitutionally mandatory to hold regular elections to local government bodies. Seats are reserved in the elected bodies, and the executive heads of these institutions for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and other backward classes. At least one third of all population positions are reserved for women. An independent institution called the State Election Commission have been created in each state to conduct panchayat and municipal elections. The state government are required to share some powers and revenue with local government bodies. The nature of sharing varies from state to state. Rural local government is popularly known by the name Panchayat Raj. Each village or a group of villages in some state has a Grama Panchayat. This is a council of consisting of several ward members, often called Panch, and a president or Sarpanch. They are directly elected by all the adult population living in the ward or village. It is the decision-making body for the entire village. The Panchayat work under the overall supervision of the Grama Sabha. All the voters in the villages are its members. It has to meet at least twice or thrice in a year to approve the annual budget of the Grama Panchayat and to review the performance of the Grama Panchayat. Local government structure goes right up the district level. A few Gram Panchayat are grouped together to form what is usually called a Panchayat Samiti or block or mandal. The members of this representative body are elected by all Panchayat members in that area. All the Panchayat Samitis or mandals in a district together constitute the Jilla Parikshit. Most members of the Jilla Parikshit are elected. Members of the Lok Sabha and members MLAs of the district and some other officials of the district level bodies are also its members. Jilla Parikshit chairperson is the political head of the Jilla Parikshit. Similarly, the local government bodies exist for urban areas as well. Municipalities are set up in towns. Big cities are constituted into municipal corporation. Both municipalities and municipal corporation are controlled by elected bodies consisting of people's representatives. Municipal chairperson is the political head of the municipality. In a municipal corporation, such an officer is called the mayor. An experiment in Brazil. A city called Porto Alegre in Brazil has carried out an extraordinary experiment in combining decentralization with participative democracy. City has set up a parallel organization operating alongside the municipal council, enabling local inhabitants to take real decisions for the city. The nearly 13 lakh people in this city get to participate in making the budget for their own city. City is divided into many sectors or what we call wards. Each sector has a meeting like that of the Gram Sabha in which anyone living in that area can participate. There are some meetings to discuss issues that affect the entire city. Any citizens of the city can participate in those meetings. The budget of the city is discussed in these meetings. The proposals are put to the municipality that takes the final decisions about it. About 20,000 people participate in this decision making exercise every year. This method has ensured that the money cannot be spent only for the benefit of the colonies where rich people live. Buses now run to the poor colonies, and builders cannot evict slum dwellers without resettling them. In our own country, a similar experiment has taken place in some areas of Kerala. Ordinary people have participated in making a plan for the development of the locality. This new system of local government is the largest experiment in democracy conducted anywhere in the world. There are now about 36 lakh elected representatives in the panchayat and municipalities all over the country. This number is bigger than the population of many countries in the world. Constitutional status for local government has helped to deepen democracy in our country. It has also increased women's representation and voice in our democracy. At the same time, there are many difficulties while elections are held regularly and enthusiastically. Gram Sabha are not held regularly. Most state governments have not transferred significant powers to the local government, nor have they given adequate resources. We are thus still a long way from realizing the ideal of self-government. Find out about the local government in the village or town you live in. If you live in a village, find out the name of the following: your panch or ward member, your sarpanch, your panchayat samiti, chairperson of the Jillas Parishad. Also find out when did the last meeting of the Gram Sabha take place and how many people took part in it. If you live in urban areas, find out the name of the municipal councillor and the municipal chairperson or mayor. Also find out about the budget of the municipal corporation, municipality and the major items on which the money was spent. So that's all about this chapter. If you are interested, please do like, share and subscribe my channel. Okay, thank you.